Welcome to World of Conan, the Hyborian Age, a short introduction. The Hyborian Age was created by author Robert E. Howard as the post-Atlantean setting of his Conan the Cimmerian stories. It first appeared in The Phoenix on the Sword, the first of his Conan the Barbarian stories, which was published in 1932 in Weird Tales. Designed to fit in with Howard's previous and lesser-known tales of Kal, which were set in the Thurian Age at the time of Atlantis. Howard described the Hyborian Age taking place sometime after the sinking of Atlantis and before the beginning of recorded ancient history. Later editors and adapters such as L. Sprague de Camp and Roy Thomas placed the Hyborian Age around 10,000 BC. The name Hyborian is a contraction of the Greek concept of the land of Hyboria, literally beyond the north wind. This was a mythical place far to the north that was not cold and where things did not age. Howard made the first kingdom to actually emerge in the Hyborian Age, Kingdom of Hyboria to the northeast, interestingly. This kingdom of Hyboria, which was established in 16,000 BC by the descendants of Thurian refugees, Thuria, which was a continent before the sinking of Atlantis. These descendants, devolved into barbarism, were now called Hybori. It is from them that the Hyborian Age gets its name, when the Hybori people conquered and settled the lands during this time period. Howard's Hyborian epoch, described in his essay The Hyborian Age, is a mythical time before any civilization known to anthropologists. Its setting is prehistoric Europe and North Africa, with occasional references to Asia and other continents. Robert E. Howard writes in his essay, "Nothing in this article is to be considered as an attempt to advance any theory in opposition to accepted history. It is simply a fictional background for a series of fiction stories. When I began writing the Conan stories a few years ago, I prepared this history of his age and the peoples of that age, in order to lend him and his sagas a greater aspect of realness. And I found that by adhering to the facts and spirit of that history in writing the stories, it was easier to visualize and therefore to present him as a real flesh and blood character rather than a ready-made product. In writing about him and his adventures in the various kingdoms of his age, I have never violated the facts or spirit of the history here set down, but have followed the lines of that history as closely as the writer of actual historical fiction follows the lines of actual history. I have used this history as a guide in all the stories in this series that I have written." On a map Howard drew conceptualizing the Hyborian Age, his vision of the Mediterranean Sea is dry. The Nile, which he renamed the river Styx, takes a westward turn at right angles just beyond the Nile Delta, plowing through the mountains so as to be able to reach the Straits of Gibraltar. Although his Black Sea is also dry, his Caspian Sea, which he renames the Vilayet Sea, extends northward to reach the Arctic Ocean, so as to provide a barrier to encapsulate the settings of his stories. Not only are his Baltic Sea and English Channel dry, but most of the North Sea and the vast region to the west, easily including Ireland, are too. Meanwhile, the west coast of Africa on his map lies beneath the sea. In his fantasy setting of the Hyborian Age, Howard created imaginary kingdoms to which he gave names inspired by or adapted from a variety of mythological and historical sources. Kitai is his version of China, lying far to the east. Corinthia is his name for a Hellenistic civilization, a name derived from the city of Corinth and reminiscent of the imperial fief of Carinthia in the Middle Ages. Howard imagines the Hyborian Picts occupying a large area in the northwest. These are the Celtic people or Proto-Celtic people. During the time of Conan, Aquilonia was the mightiest kingdom, also known as the Jewel of the West. This was during the height of the Hyborian Age, and Conan would become king of Aquilonia himself. Aquilonia was meant to parallel France, and there was a French region during the Middle Ages called Aquitaine. Stygia, the land of evil sorcerers, would eventually become Egypt. Robert E. Howard writes in his essay, The Hyborian Age, 500 years later, the kingdoms of the world are clearly defined, the kingdoms of the Hyborians. Aquilonia, Nemedia, Brithunia, Hyboria, Koth, Ophir, Argos, Corinthia, and one known as the Border Kingdom dominate the western world. Zamora lies to the east and Zingara to the southwest of these kingdoms. People alike in darkness of complexion and exotic habits, but otherwise unrelated. Far to the south sleeps Stygia, untouched by foreign invasion, but the peoples of Shem have exchanged the Stygian yoke for the less galling one of Koth. The dusky masters have been driven south of the great river Styx, Nilus or Nile, which flowing north from the shadowy hinterlands turns almost at right angles and flows almost due west through the pastoral meadowlands of Shem, to empty into the Great Sea. North of Aquilonia, the westernmost Hyborian kingdom, are the Cimmerians, ferocious savages, untamed by the invaders, but advancing rapidly because of contact with them. They are the descendants of the Atlanteans, now progressing more steadily than their old enemies, the Picts, who dwell in the wilderness west of Aquilonia. At the twilight of the Hyborian era, the Aquilonians overextended their empire, Cimmerians and Picts overwhelmed its frontiers, and the disgruntled soldiers of annexed peoples revolted. Fire and sword brought down the empire. Its former rivals and territories were conquered by northern invaders, the Vanir, the Aesir and Cimmerians, and the hordes of the Hyrcanians. Turan and Hyrcania later collapsed and the Vanir took over Stygia. 1500 years later, in 9500 BC, another cataclysm toppled the existing civilizations and formed the current Earth. Howard obviously had a love for history and mythology, where he drew inspiration for his tales, lands and characters, and instead of putting his tales in actual history and having to deal with time-consuming research and detail and draw someone's ire of having historical anachronisms and problems, he created his own setting where he could tell his tales freely, yet still align with history, or what would become the history that we know. The Hyborian Age dominated Earth from 14,000 to 9,500 BC. It is sometimes simply 8,000 years after the Great Cataclysm. The Great Cataclysm, or the Great Flood, or Great Fall as it is also known, which was the sinking of Atlantis. Or 3,000 years after the fall of Acheron, circa 10,000 during the Age of Conan. Others consider the Hyborian Age as starting circa 16,000 BC, or with the fall of Acheron, which marked the end of the Age of Acheron, circa 13,000 BC. The Age of Conan was set around 10,000 BC. Other sources mention the Hyborian Age as ending in approximately 8,000 BC. I hope this will have informed you a bit, at least what the Hyborian Age is. Hopefully it was not too confusing, but if it was, there's the essay by Robert E. Howard, which I will link a video to from another channel, so you can listen to the whole essay, or you can read it on the internet. It is easily, you can easily find it on the internet. So if you like this content and this video, I hope you subscribe and like and comment your thoughts and ideas if you have any on this subject or otherwise on Conan. Also, if you just want to support, you can subscribe, and I know it can sometimes be a hassle to, you're subscribed to countless channels and you get the notifications. You get those on your mobile phone, and it's kind of annoying when you get like 50 notifications because you're subscribed to so many channels. But if you just want to help out a small channel, you can just subscribe and put notifications off, and that's what I do to help just channels to grow. You don't get annoyed when you wake up and you look at your mobile phone, and you can check back to the channel at your own time when you want and check the content. So that would be cool if you just help in that way, So that is all, and I'll see you on the next video. Hail Conan.